Today's information uncovers a simple truth. The clerical regime is ceaselessly and secretly forging ahead with the military dimensions of its nuclear program, and it has no intention whatsoever of abandoning that program.
Well, that was Suma Sansani, the U.S. representative of the group that exposed Iran's secret nuclear program a decade ago. They say Tehran continues to lie and is much more advanced than previously thought about its possibilities to build a nuclear bomb. That's a charge, of course, that Iran has long denied. But the group, the National Council of Resistance of Iran, says Iran's military complex at Parchin is the site of 2 secret explosive chambers that they say can be used for nuclear bomb testing. You know, Iran has never allowed United Nations inspectors to visit and inspect Parchin, and the United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, says Iran has been stonewalling them about its nuclear program. There's been no progress. This, as a potential nuclear deal, looms in just 2 weeks. So what does the world do? Alireza Jafarzadeh is an official of the National Council of Resistance of Iran and joins us now. Alireza, what does this new information about these 2 so-called chambers mean?
Well, the new information about these 2 explosive chambers, which, by the way, Tehran has never conceded that they even exist, clearly shows that Tehran has been extensively involved, not only conducting tests and activities related to weaponization of its nuclear program, but consistently hiding it, denying access to sites and allowing interviews to for the scientists. It clearly shows the information that the NCRI released yesterday clearly shows that the Iranian military, the defense ministry, the Revolutionary Guards are heavily involved in this. In fact, they are the ones who are controlling all of these activities related to these chambers. They built these 2 chambers, and then they moved at least one of them to this site in Parchin. And we were able to identify the top nuclear scientist that overseeing all of these projects. His name is Said Borji. We're also able to identify a top Ukrainian scientist. His name is Danilenko, who was involved both in terms of the design and installation of this site secretly in Parchin, and also being able to show how the new organization that the regime created in 2011, known as SEPAN, that oversees all nuclear-related activities of the Iranian regime, was actually involved in this in Parchin.
You know, those two officials aren't here to defend themselves, but what you're basically sketching is like an international, global effort by Iran, you know, dealing with North Korea, actually putting a nuclear reactor in Syria, developing ballistic missiles that could potentially carry a nuclear warhead, you know, on and on and on, with this whole, you know, strategy of various states helping them, in your view, to build a nuclear bomb?
Well, Tehran has employed the resources and expertise and help not only from North Korea, but we were able to show that Ukraine and Belarus were also involved in this. Iran regime had created an organization dating back to a few decades ago whose job is basically to recruit these experts and bring them to Iran secretly, not just for, you know, teaching courses or anything like that, but actually to get involved in the nuclear weapons program of Iran. And in the case of Danilenko, his son-in-law, and also some companies from Belarus were involved. So there's an international...
If they're doing this, and this is happening, what happens to the nuclear talks? And what happens when officials, do U.S. officials confront Tehran with this stuff? The president, of course, sent that letter. I mean, you unveiled this more than a decade ago. What does Tehran say if they're handed these papers and this information and this alleged evidence? You know, what's their answer?
Well, Tehran's response has been systematically since a decade ago. Basically, first they deny it, then they drag it, and then they put it aside. The most recent report by the International Atomic Energy Agency basically says that they're not getting anywhere. Tehran is not responding to a number of serious, outstanding questions related to the military application of the nuclear weapons program of Iran.
So what does that mean, Alireza? What does that mean when they're going into these negotiations? You got the deadline on November 24th. What does it mean to the U.S. and the P5 and the world powers Do they say to Tehran, you're not being clean, we're not going to have a deal, we're still going to talk even more, or we're going to forget this, you're not telling the truth?
Unfortunately, the trend has been over the past 10 years. Tehran has been cheating, and they're caught by their cheatings, and then the negotiations continue. Remember,
so
over the past 10 years...
what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I don't know what's really happening in terms of negotiations, but clearly, if this negotiation is going to lead to something really fruitful, it has to lead to something that would abandon the enrichment program of Iran, the heavy weather facility they have in Iraq, that needs to abandon. They need to provide access to these serious sites like Parchin. They need to provide access to be able to interview for the IAEA all these top nuclear scientists.
Yeah, but they're stonewalling that. They haven't allowed that at all. So why would they change their behavior? Finally, do you think they will change their behavior?
They will not.
They won't. Right, that's it right there. And what happens if they don't?
Tehran has decided that it's not going to abandon its policy in the past. Why should they abandon it? Because it's working. Remember, when we exposed all those major nuclear sites in 2002, Tehran had none of those capabilities they have today. They were able to negotiate while at the same time expanding the nuclear weapons program. And during the talks, the IAEA report says that even actually since the talks started, Tehran has been even less cooperative. So the question is, what's the outcome of these talks, and what is it going to lead to if it's not going to lead to abandoning the nuclear weapons program of Iran, period?
Well, we'll see what happens November 24th. The clock is ticking, and so far those officials say not enough cooperation from Iran. Alireza Jafarzadeh of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, we thank you for appearing with us tonight.